Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
All right, gentlemen, welcome again to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. My name is Scott McKay, at Scott McKay on both Clubhouse and Twitter. Real Scott McKay on Instagram. You can search the YouTube stuff by going to YouTube and typing out my name, SCOTMCKAY. The website is mountaintoppodcast.com, and I invite you to join us on Facebook at the fast-growing Facebook group for men that is called the Mountaintop Summit. Today, we're going to have some fun. I have a new friend of mine. He's a great guy. How can he not be? He comes from Baltimore, Maryland, just like yours truly. Had a little Ravens talk going on before we clicked record on this bad boy. His name is Dominique Brightmon International. You can call him Dom. He's a member of the John Maxwell team, which is pretty cool. And he's the author of 2 books, Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself. And the one that we're going to talk about more today, even than the other one, Stay the Course. The Elite Performer's 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. All the way from Baltimore. Dom, welcome, man.
Man, thank you much, Scott. Appreciate you, man. This is freaking awesome, man.
Appreciate you, too. This is going to be a lot of fun. We were already having a pretty good time before we even hit record on this. And the first thing I want to ask you about, Dom, is you are really big into studying what makes guys who are elite performers, high-end guys who are high achievers. You really love to dig in, and you're a student of what makes them who they are, what makes them not only achieve success early on, but, keep it up over the course of time. How did you get into that? How did you decide that you wanted that to be a big part of your life's purpose, figuring that all out?
Solid question, man. Like, that's one heck of a question to start off with. Funny enough for me, it actually started off back in 2012, back in the year where we thought the world was going to end in the U.S. of A., but all that really happened is that we lost Twinkies for a month. Funny enough.
Is that when the Mayans said the world was going to end?
Yes, it was.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, I was, yeah.
I didn't forget. I'm on it.
It was hilarious. Yeah, it was like, oh yeah, the world's going to ever make a whole movie about it, 2012. But no, it wasn't actually the scare tactics of that silliness, but it was actually just me getting into a nice little 3-pronged attack of a car accident and having to start the long 7-year journey of caregiving for my dying father, who was a veteran in the US of A, and also getting called into my office by my boss because my personal life was showing up in my professional life, and it forced me to find personal development to really take myself to the next level. And after reading one book by John Maxwell, became a voracious reader and really the best student I can of just self-leadership, because really we lead ourselves from the cradle to the grave the longest, and we're going to need tools and techniques to help ourselves along the journey.
Well, it sounds like then similarly to me, you had kind of a patch there where you sort of felt like you hit rock bottom, and the only thing you can do when you hit bottom is bounce back up. Right? And so you decided to figure out how you could go from a difficult place in your life to where you could really be an achiever. And I expected that from you. A little bit of what I've read up on you revealed that you'd probably go in that direction, of course. I didn't come into that blindly. But, nobody, it seems, decides I'm going to study how elite performers are and what they do and what makes them who they are. Kind of like the Napoleon Hill approach of Think and Grow Rich, unless they have some vested interest or at least deep curiosity themselves on how to become one of those guys, him or herself, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you're about 9 years into this, and how's it going? You've written a couple books. You're on the John Maxwell team. You got a following.
Yeah, man. It's really going north. It's been one heck of a journey, and I still can't believe it's been 9 years. My God, like, still reminds me of the time I heard Eric Thomas speak, talking about the times where, oh yeah, graduate college, you're 20, next thing you wake up, you're 30, wake up again, you're 40, and then next thing you wake up, you're 50, and it's like, where the heck did the past 30 years go? It felt like 3 weeks.
You feel like you slept your life away. You're just tired. Yeah, but that's a thing. A lot of guys, they just can't believe how old they've gotten. It's not like they meant to be 50 years old and still working the same job they did 20 years ago, but we kind of get into this rut And we get into that comfort familiarity zone and we develop a little bit of fear of trying something different, don't we?
Yeah, and it's like you have to get into that place of pain to really get more pleasure out of life. Like even what you said yourself, where we both had our moments in life where we felt a moment of pain. It's like, man, this place where I'm currently at, I don't need it to be my present in the future. So really just have to find our own metaphorical acres of diamonds out there. Like there's so many tools out there, this podcast being one of them, to help guys get out of that rut, because ruts are going to happen, but you don't have to stay there. You don't have to be a victim and just sully all the time. You can always get out of it, even if you have to crawl out of there bit by bit. Even if you have to doggy paddle out of there, you can still make progress to get out of your rut.
Yeah, it's interesting you would mention all of that. People all the time are surprised when I tell them, had Lucent Technologies not fired me, had they not laid me off in 2003, I may still be sitting behind a cubicle there, scratching and clawing my way up the corporate ladder, because nothing ever compelled me to leave. I was getting a nice salary. I was doing a pretty good job. People were always impressed when they heard what I did for a living. But man, I was dying in there. I mean, it was eating away at my soul. All I was doing every day, day in, day out, was helping one big company get richer and do so by making an even bigger company richer. And it just never really felt like I was leaving the world a better place. Yet I had to have my proverbial cheese moved, as the famous book talks about, right? Yep. They had to say, sorry, Scott, you don't work here anymore. Your quote unquote dream job is gone. Then my wife had to leave me. Then my daughter had to move 5 hours away. Then I had to feel like, man, you have really lost here, to shake me up enough to say, I don't feel like a victim anymore, because it sucks. Just feeling like you have no personal control is the absolute worst. And yet I think sometimes it really does take having a series of really unfortunate things happen in our lives before we say to ourselves, you know what, there's only one place to go. And as you would say, it's north. Things have gone south pretty much to the South Pole here. We're in Antarctica with our lives here. So things have got to recover. And I love how you talk about not being a victim. As you know, Jocko Willink's company, Origin in Maine, sponsors this show, one of 3 shows they sponsor. And the one thing you can't possibly be about, if you want that to be the state of affairs, is victimhood. So, no, we talk about empowerment, gaining that lost ground, moving upward, moving forward, not blaming other people, but taking full responsibility, or as Jocko would say, extreme ownership towards what you're doing and where you're going. And I think a lot of people have a lot more say in the matter of who they are, first of all, and where they're going and what they're going to ultimately be doing and what that success looks like than they think, don't they?
Heck yeah, I could definitely see that again, man.
Well, you have what you call 7 daily habits of elite performers. And I want to go ahead and dig right in because I can't wait to hear what they are. But I have to tell you, because I'm sure at least 1 or 2 guys out there has already noticed, that kind of rolls off the tongue similarly to 7 habits of highly effective people, which is, of course, a staple in the business book world, in the self-development world. And it's Stephen Covey's legendary book on, how to do what we're talking about here. Develop some habits that make you uber successful. So I'm sure you didn't just parrot back Stephen Covey's points. So go ahead and spill the beans, Dom. Tell us what the 7 daily habits of elite performers are, and let's talk about it.
Sure thing. So funny enough, it's actually 7 keys for sustainable success. Habits are actually only one of the keys. So,
well, no, you know what? That's probably important to note here, because one of the talking points I got off of the one sheet that your publicist sent me, or whoever it was, talked about 7 daily habits of elite performers. But indeed, the focus of your book is not to be confused with that one specific talking point. That's just one of the 7 is what you're saying, correct?
Yes, sir.
Beautiful. All right. So we're already on the straight and narrow here, man. Let's dive right in. What are they? What are the 7?
Sure thing. So any guys listening, if your name is Mitch, you're going to love it. So the first 5 are in a little acrostic called Mitch. So
Hear
the
that,
M.
Mitch? You know who you are.
Yeah, man. That's right, Mitch. You're going to enjoy life. You can say, hey, I'm in somebody's book and I ain't even ever written one yet.
Guess what? I know there's at least one Mitch by name who's also in Baltimore listening to this show.
His name Mitch Merkin, is it?
No.
Okay.
I'm not going to dox the poor guy. I actually like him. He's a good dude.
Okay.
But it's interesting. He and I both, I'm sure, can't wait to hear what's coming next. We're waiting with bated breath, so go for it.
Sure thing. So the M stands for mental awareness. The I stands for influence awareness. The T stands for time awareness. The C stands for connection awareness. And the H stands for habit awareness.
Are these all 5 subpoints of the first point?
Nope, actually, those are just first 5 of the 7 keys, funny enough.
Got it. Okay. All right. Got it. All right. So go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you.
Oh, good. Like making sure you get to the heart of the matter. So the other 2, the 6th one is going to be gratitude, and the 7th one is consistency and commitment.
All right. So help us wrap our head around how those secret keys work in concert to help us indeed have sustainable success in life. First of all, do you want to define what success is?
So I personally like to define success as self-mastery, where you're on this journey of really finding yourself, getting to know yourself a lot better. So a place where, you know what, I can actually do the things that I want to do, go where I want to go, and do things that actually help other people. And when you get to the point of self-mastery, knowing how you tick, you'll be able to better help other folks around you and help yourself as well. Because really, when you're aware of yourself and you're on the journey of self-mastery and knowing yourself, then you'll truly have success, because when you know what you don't want, that helps you get closer to what you do want, and vice versa.
Well, our mantra around here is deserve what you want, which was revolutionary in 2005 and still is today, because most people have been told they automatically deserve it because they feel like deserving it. But my thought process has always been there's got to be some self-work. There's got to be a notion that if I want something, I'm going to have to be worthy to get it. It's going to have to be earned. It isn't just handed to me. And in the context of a relationship, of course, that means in order to get the woman of my dreams, I have to represent to her what she's looking for in order for that relationship to really be viable, and in order for me to be as interesting to her as she is to me. So yeah, man, we're already on the same page in a lot of ways. You use this word awareness a lot, and at least 5 of the 7 secret keys had that word in it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and the major thing, especially with time awareness, indeed, because there's the whole time management piece. I'm sure a lot of guys have heard about time management. But the thing is, like with time itself, you can't really manage time. You can only manage your attention and where it goes with that time, because we all have the same amount of time, 168 hours in a week and 24 hours a day. And it's like, well, how much of that time are you going to dedicate to your sleep, dedicate to your work, including the commute time and heck, commuting while listening to this. And it's really all about being aware of how much time you have, as opposed to trying to manage something that you only get a finite amount of. So being aware of that time and then taking action to be more not only aware of it, but also doing something with that awareness. Because when you're aware of something, then that means you can take more intentional, focused action on doing certain things that'll help you get to where you want. So you'll actually get to that place, playing off of you, where you truly receive what you feel like you deserve, what you want out of life.
You know, as you were talking about all these different varieties of awareness, conspicuous by its absence from that list of main secret keys was indeed self-awareness. Now, we've done a whole show here on self-awareness, and it was a real eye-opener. And it's amazing to me how many people really do lack self-awareness. I mean, you can just see it in the parking lot at your local grocery store. On blatant display.
Amen to that.
But what you did was you kind of came back around and you used the term self-awareness kind of as an overall surround to all these points. And it's kind of like the overarching theme of all this awareness. It has to start with you, doesn't it? Self-awareness.
Yeah, man, because it's so darn true. Because at the end of the day, it starts with ourselves and our own decisions that we make and the actions we take as a result of those decisions.
Why do you think people lack this element of their being so profoundly so often? What's going on in this culture?
It may sound like a cliche answer for this podcast in particular, but I think it's just the whole instant gratification. Like, everything is so readily available to us now, like no matter where you are financially, it's like, hey, you could still get into debt and really get into buying all these things that you want. Like, hey, you can get your food delivered to you. Heck, there's even born out there, if you're really into that sort of thing and you don't feel like going out and actually being social with people. And heck, even with Amazon Prime, like get things in 2 days, heck, even sometimes the same day if you're lucky, depending on the item you order. You can get things so fast in a hurry where folks don't feel like they have to really work for things, and that really takes really some of the fun out of it. Now, granted, it's like sometimes you may not feel like quote unquote working, especially things like a day job, but when it comes to taking action and keeping your body in motion so that way you get more out of it later, you really take the joy out of that. So I think it's really just having ready access to so many things out there. Heck, even YouTube and Netflix, like you don't have to wait a whole week for the next episode. If a whole TV show is out there, you can binge for a few hours if you would like to do that all at once if it's ready and available for you. So I think it's just having so many options to really distract ourselves with is what keeps us that way.
You know, you talked about the immediate gratification and Amazon, and something that's crossed my mind while you were talking is back in the day, if you were doing a commercial and you weren't really a doctor, you just played one on TV, you kind of had to express that disclaimer. Nowadays, thanks to Amazon, if you're not really an astronaut, but you just play one on TV, no problem. We'll send you to space for free anyway. Kind of true. Didn't even really have to earn it. All those poor bastards like Armstrong and Grissom that had to go through this rigorous training and be test pilots and put their ass in a sling hoping they don't die and get burned up. Hey, man, all Bill Shatner had to do was be Captain Kirk for a couple seasons. Not a bad gig. Things are a lot easier than they used to be, right? No, but in all seriousness, not to take a dramatically serious turn vis-a-vis the levity we just shared, but it seems like over the last couple generations in this country, it has become extremely effective to control with weakness, hasn't it? Poor me. I'm a victim because of my status, because of the country I emigrated from, because the color of my skin, because of the state I live in, because of who I'm married to, because of the illnesses that I have, because of the shots I will or won't take, because of who I sleep with or who I voted for or didn't vote for, or what I do for a living or don't do for a living. There are certain entitlements expected. And it seems like if you're the one who's standing up against victimhood and picking oneself up by your own bootstraps, you're the one vilified by these masses who are like, shut up. They're sending me checks. What's wrong with you? And it becomes the din of those voices growing louder than the collective voices of the kind of people who really did make this country great. So I would love to hear how you reconcile all that, because, you're not about being a victim. You're about being self-made. And a lot of people out there just don't see the value in it anymore, Dom. They think, hey, I'm going to join this echo chamber of people who are crying and screaming until we get what we demand instead of deserving what we want. So I'm sure you want to riff all over that. Let us have it.
So true nowadays, and the checks from the government thing, it's like the folks tend to forget us. Well, probably they're not forgetting now since, landlords are coming for their money if they haven't already.
Going up. Anybody who knows how money works saw this coming.
Yep. And funny enough, as you mentioned inflation, like talking with one of my relatives a few months ago, they're like, man, like they should raise minimum wage. The people deserve it. But at the same time, you have to think about the business owners too, because someone has to fit the bill for that minimum wage, not only to pay the wages, but have to tax off some of the money for Social Security as well. And if they got insurance policies and benefits, they have to pay for those too, on top of everything else they have to foot the bill for. And heck, even sometimes the owners and CEOs themselves, they may take a salary cut, or they may just go broke to make sure that their people are taken care of. There's quite a few stories out there of some folks who were actually famous for making sure they make sure that other folks eat first. Heck, even a book I'm sure a lot of folks like to read, or have read at least once, from Simon Sinek. There we go. Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last. Like, it's really about making sure the folks around you that are part of your team, your success team, they are taken care of. So that way the mission, the goal will be accomplished. And also the fact that those that are screaming the loudest, they have the time to scream. The folks that are not victims, they're too busy working, building the life that they want, that they don't even have time to pay attention to the screams.
Ain't that the truth? all the people trolling each other on Twitter, fomenting all this hate and discord. I mean, these are socially dysfunctional people, hence them not having a real job, hence them having the time to get onto Twitter and troll each other. I mean, hello, this is a thing. So I got to put it this way to you, man. Assuming, which is pretty safe of an assumption, by the way, that the kind of guy listening to this show is not a victim and he's all about becoming an elite performer. What are some of the practical steps we can take to actually get ourselves into that rarefied air of people who have kind of put victimhood in the rearview mirror? They're not dependent on someone else to have power in their stead so that they give them what they want as a handout. They're not looking for a leg up anymore. They're looking to have a way out of all this and really make something of themselves if they haven't already. The reason why I want to hear you talk about the nuts and bolts of how to become this person is because I think there are a lot of steps that people like to parrot over and over again. They've become almost trite banalities at this point. Because they heard from someone else that you're supposed to do this. And, oh, yeah, this is what makes people become elite performers. And I could rattle off a bunch of them, and I will. But I'd like for you to talk about that first person. So, we get your points on the table first. But what are these habits? What are these rituals? What are these skills? What are these mindsets that you think are really uniquely shared by people who are elite performers?
So the first thing is to really start with your mindset. That's a classic one, I'm pretty sure. That's kind of become a trite sort of thing nowadays, but hear me out on this. And my suggestion for this, in terms of mindset to go even deeper, is to focus on having an advancing man philosophy. And that's basically where you are going into different places, whether it's like even in your job or even outside the grocery store, something like that. Networking events, virtual events, to go in with a service mindset of helping others succeed and just helping others to be successful. And one of the things you can do that is by asking yourself questions, because questions are so powerful because they require a response. And one of the things I like to do with myself daily, especially the night before, is to ask myself, what good am I going to do today? To focus on doing something good as opposed to waking up and realize, okay, God, I got to get up. Like, it's like, hey, you don't have to focus on really, oh man, I have to do this. It's like, hey, I get to get up today. I get to go to work, especially now this year where I feel like truthfully more people may have died this year than 2020 with the aftermath of everything. So focusing on what good you're going to do today, what good can you share with somebody else that could, well, the small thing, that's kind of outdated depending on where you are if you have a mask mandate. But a kind word with somebody, word of encouragement, calling somebody you haven't talked to in a while. Heck, and another thing too with the third question would be, what must I do? And that can focus on things that you feel like you need to drill down on. The big goal maybe, hey, get out of my mom's house. Okay, what's the first step? Save a particular percentage of my income and actually visit certain places around the area where I may want to go. Heck, even driving to or even walking to certain places where you want to live, and then setting aside money for that and making yourself a better person. Heck, if you want to write a book of your own, like thinking things when you think it, that's another thing you can do. Keep a notepad with you and just write things down. So making sure you're getting your mind right by doing actions to change your mindset, to focus on being a person who's a servant leader as opposed to a person who likes to take and take again, because we have a lot of those again.
Yeah. Ink it when you think it. I love that. I love that turn of phrase, because I have said, even on this show before, the way to make sure you never have writer's block again, the way to make sure you never run out of ideas. If you're a comedian, the way to make sure you never run out of fresh material is you write that stuff down as soon as you think of it, precisely when you weren't trying to think of it. You have that notepad ready to jot down that idea. Because I tell you what, if you say, oh, that's a good one, I'll have to remember that and write it when I get home, and it's going to be gone. It'll be vaporized, and it is never coming back.
You can say that again.
Right.
You can say that again. That's such truth.
Mitch Hedberg had a joke where he said, yeah, when I wake up in the middle of the night and I have a funny joke, I have to make sure I have a notebook there on my bedstand so I could write it down. And if I forget to put that notepad on my bedstand, I just roll over back asleep and have to convince myself it wasn't really funny.
It's true.
He delivered it so much better than I could, but same sentiment. Very, very true. I love that. Now, one of the things you mentioned there that is such pure gold that I don't want to let it go without being underscored just a little bit is this idea of stepping away from being so self-absorbed and trying to get, and instead give back to people. When I have you guys on my show, one of the things I always say, and we'll do this together when we're done recording for sure, Dom, is who else can I introduce you to? Who has been a guest on my show you would like to meet? How can you guys connect and serve each other? And people are sometimes very surprised that I'm willing to give away my contact list. But it's not like I have the market cornered on being able to interview this person or be friends with this person. I like to give it away. I like to share who I know with other people so they can benefit too, because I find that, I benefit from that too. People stop being so parsimonious with their contact lists with me. And the next thing you know, I have a whole group of amazing people I'm acquainted with who are smart and a lot of fun to hang out with. And it's a really good deal. But whenever someone falls into that trap of saying to themselves, hey, you know what? I got to keep people's hands off my stack. I got to be selfish about this. They're really never going to have any more going for them than what they already have. Now, turning to the current situation, it's not very funny. Certainly, lots of people have passed away because of COVID. Lots of people have recurring health effects. They lost their jobs. They lost loved ones. People's lives got significantly changed for the worse. And yeah, assuming people who are listening here are certainly still alive, we can improve our situation. But I'll tell you what, all that isolation has indeed made people slip into a state of affairs where we're self-absorbed, hasn't it? And it's not like we meant to get here. It's just we spent so much time with ourselves over 2 years that we got to thinking about that more. So it's kind of like we have to retrain those atrophied muscles, don't we? Those social muscles, if you will.
Just driving out on the road, it's like, darn, can we go back to like April 2020 where y'all were still in the house? Because, man, driving was so much fun when there's just people on the road.
Yeah, I tell you what, I've noticed that the rush hour traffic has picked up again in San Antonio. For sure. Yeah, that's a thing. You talked about kind of an interesting mix of mindset and then some activities that help reinforce those mindsets. Like, before you go to bed, you say to yourself, okay, what do I got coming up in the morning? What's going to be important? How can I give back tomorrow? And a lot of people indeed talk about saying affirmations and standing in front of the mirror and doing that Stuart Smalley stuff. I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me, and stuff like that. It makes certain people roll their eyes, but meditating goes along with that. Some people really advocate that one should spend 15, 20 minutes just clearing one's head every day before we fill it up with busyness all over again. To me, that kind of sounds like lather, rinse, repeat, empty out your head, fill it back up, empty it out, fill it back up. But, what is the value of really reminding yourself what you're about?
Yeah, that's a powerful question right there. The reason why I have to remind ourselves is because we forget. It even alludes back to earlier in the show when I was talking about how sometimes we age so darn fast, especially after college in the late teens, early 20s, where we wake up one day and we're 38, is the fact that we just have to really remind ourselves of how far we've come and always count our victories. Heck, even another takeaway tip that I borrowed from Sam Leibowitz is the fact that instead of having a gratitude journal, have a victory log where you log every win you've had in the day, no matter how small or how big. Like getting on the show, that's a big win for me today. Like waking up today, that's a big win for me today. Like, hey, getting my elderly mom to the doctor's appointment and finding out that she's on her way to better health once again. Like that's a victory. Like just counting all those victories and creating yourself that journal of proof to where you can look back and say, man, I've actually done more than I thought, because there have been times where I've fallen victim to forgetting my own victories, no matter how big or small, and feel like I've done nothing when I've actually done something. It may not feel like big, extraordinary, got to fill the stadium up to surround me, have a party about it. It's like, hey, like small things build up to big things eventually. So yeah, just have victory log.
That's huge. The small victories that add up later to a bigger victory. If a guy comes to me and I say, okay, so what's your goal? And he tells me, I want to be the next Tony Robbins.
Nope.
He's probably going to fail. Because if that's the first step to feeling like you've succeeded or that you've moved toward maximizing your ability to reach your goals, that's one big, nasty, giant step to have to take. So I still have the email from the first person I'd never heard of who bought my first book for $27.
Nice.
It was huge. I still remember the first radio show I was ever on terrestrial radio. And I mean, I called my mom and told her about it. You know, nowadays I don't even bother to bore anybody. I don't even tell my wife, you know what I mean? I just say, hey, you guys need to be quiet for 30 minutes in there. But you mentioned the word in passing, gratitude, and you used it in the context of victory. And I have to tell you, I indeed have this list of greatest hits, you know, buzzwords and go-to tactics that are allegedly assigned to people who are like super successful. And gratitude was on my list. Kind of, yeah, Tony Robbins thing for sure. But I think when people are bitter and they feel like someone got the success that they were supposed to get and they start comparing themselves to people who are more successful, I think it does keep you from being successful. Whereas if you say, hey, you know what? Here are some victories. They're small victories, but they were good and they are worthy to be excited about. And you know what? I'm going to treat those as stepping stones to an even greater victory. Hey, you know what? In my mind, that's where the terms gratitude and victory kind of intersect. They do work together. Gratitude is the springboard off which one jumps to gain some victories here and there. Good stuff. Yeah.
Ooh, sounds like a social media tweet to me.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to write it down in my notebook or else it'll vaporize. Thank goodness we got the record button going here. You know, I told you earlier that Jocko Willink's company, Origin and Main, sponsors this show. And famously, Jocko posts his Ironman triathlete watch every morning with 4:30 or 4:28 on the dial saying, hey, you know what? Let's get after it, you know. And that has become a symbol for not being a wuss and for being someone who takes ownership of his life. And I have to tell you, I don't want to get up at 4:30. I don't need to get up at 4:30. If I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, I mean, I could go to the gym, I guess, but nobody else in my life is going to be stirring or doing anything else until like 3 or 4 hours later. And so I don't understand the difference in my life between taking the time from 10:30 to 12:30 or 1 in the morning to have that quiet time and that focus and get things done and talk to people maybe who are in California and still awake and can help me get things done versus having to get up at 4:30 in the morning. It seems very arbitrary. To me, it just seems like, hey, if I'm efficient and I'm not just burning cycles doing worthless things, you know, I should be able to celebrate that. Even if I get up at a normal, decent hour, like 7 o'clock in the morning or 7:30 instead of dark 30. Whereas it seems like the proponents of getting up that early just think I'm a lazy, good for nothing person. So, I mean, God help the people who work graveyard shift. And these poor people have to come home from work 8 o'clock in the morning and get some sleep. And then, you know, when the UPS guy knocks on the door at 10:30 with a package and the guy's rubbing sleep out of his eyes, the UPS guy's thinking, man, what a lazy jerk, you know, but the guy worked all night, you know, it's a different lifestyle. I don't know. I don't like being so inflexible in terms of things like hours and specific things you have to do. Like if you're only giving yourself affirmations and not doing some Eastern version of meditating, then, you know, you're a loser and you're not doing this right. To me, that just sounds really kind of judgmental and not allowing for differences between people and what works for them, right?
Yeah, and I'm actually in agreement with you about the whole 4 a.m. thing. It's like, hey, if you could do it and it works for you, great. Like for folks like me who are night owls, it's like, that's something totally different. Plus, I'm a podcast host too, and folks in Australia, like their lunchtime, 11 a.m. is 10 p.m. for me East Coast. So if I'm interviewing them and it's their lunchtime, then that's another reason why I stay up late, because you have time zones in mind. Heck, even what you mentioned earlier about talking with somebody out in California still awake and getting help from them. Like, it's going to be hard to get up at 4 a.m. if you're done at like 11 or 12 p.m. And plus the guys working and gals too working like the graveyard shifts. Like, it's just not freaking possible.
Yeah, especially considering the next thing out of people's mouth when they're preaching to us about how to be successful and living large is make sure you get enough sleep. Yeah, right. So I'm going to stay up till midnight, burning the midnight oil, get up at 4:30, but somehow I'm going to mix in 8 hours of sleep in there. It just don't add up like the Bugs Bunny cartoons used to say, right? Now, you are indeed Dominique Brightmon International. So yeah, you're talking to people in Australia. And I mean, you know, I have guys I coach who are in the military or whatever, and they're out there living on Charlie time. And yeah, I get up in the middle of the night to talk to them when they can meet. I mean, you know, if I'm the one traveling, sometimes I'm getting up in the middle of the night wherever I am to, you know, accommodate my guys on the East Coast, and it's transparent to them. So yeah, the whole rote sleep schedule, if you aren't a morning person, you're a loser. I think that's a little close-minded. Along the same lines, some people talk about hard work, you know, do work, period, right? They just distill it down to 2 words. And other people are like, well, that's for stupid people. You're supposed to work smart, not hard. Let somebody else do all the hard work, and you just rake in all the money. Be a serial entrepreneur. Spin this business off. Passive income. Well, which is it? Is it passive or is it hard work? A lot of times people love to talk about making money when they sleep. And my joke has always been making money while I sleep is a 24-hour-a-day job. So where's the truth in the midst of all this, Dom? What do truly successful people really think and believe about work versus play and recharging the batteries and getting some sleep, and burnout versus working your brains out, and the guy who wants this the most is going to win? It just seems like a jumble, a whole thundercloud full of buzzwords and advice that seems to sound good, but many times is really kind of contradictory to itself. How do you reconcile all that?
Well, I guess to help reconcile all of that would be to realize that nothing on earth really, this may sound a little anti-religious, but nothing on earth is the true gospel. Basically, and to really explain what that is, to realize that folks like, hey, there's a lot of good advice out there, but is it good advice for you? Like, give it a try and see if it'll work for you. If it doesn't, then try something else. Like with myself, heck, even with one of my life coaches a few years ago, he himself would not be a night owl. He wasn't even a fan of that whole morning thing because, well, connecting all over the world, like coaching international, like it's a world thing, like the whole time clock thing is a 24/7 thing. It's really just picking out what works best for you and then applying it to your life and sticking with it if it's good for you. And if it doesn't work, just slide it on to the side. If the shoe fits, wear it. If it doesn't, just slide it off to the side.
Perhaps the big takeaway here is the big secret to success is staying the course, being optimistic, being generous, believing in oneself, realizing that if you put in the time, the effort, and the thought, and the mindset to do well in life, you have a much better chance than if you don't do any of those things. But above all, be open-minded. Stop being stubborn about the things that aren't working just because someone told you they were supposed to work. Do you, do what works for you. And if it's not working for you, change the course and do something different. It just seems like that sums up everything we've talked about today. His name is Dominique Brightmon, but you can call him Dom Brightmon International. He's a member of the John Maxwell team. He's the author of Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself, and also Stay the Course, the Elite Performer's 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. When you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Dom, D-O-M, you'll be able to pick up your minty fresh copy of Stay the Course on Amazon. And what I'll do, as I typically do, is take both of Dom's books and put them on my Amazon influencer page. Yeah, that's my dedicated storefront at mountaintoppodcast.com/Amazon, where you can fill your library up with the great books, not only by Dominique Brightmon International, but all the other storied and illustrious guests that I've had on this show over time. Dom Brightmon, thank you so much, sir, for coming on today. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope you'll come back and visit us real soon.
Hey, I appreciate the invite, man. Scott, you the man, the sensational Scott. Thanks a bunch.
Man, you the man, the dominator. Dominic the Dominator. You want an alliterative nickname? There's yours, man. Hey, guys, go visit mountaintoppodcast.com. Here's what I've done. hey, I've known for a while you guys were looking for this. I finally got my head together and I made it happen for you. You guys have heard me talk about the 10 plus training program where we put a whole plan of action together for you, get you to where you want to be in terms of that strategy, getting better women in your life, being a better man, masculinity, all of that stuff. But lots of you guys have been telling me, hey, Scott, you know what? There's this one sticking point and it's just killing me. And some of you guys can put your finger on what it is. Some of you guys can't. But there's this one thorn in your side. Well, that's what Giant Leap coaching is all about. Think of it as a 1+, okay? Instead of a 10+, instead of having up to 10 topics that we put together strategically to get you from point A to point B, we're going to hit that one sticking point with a big, heavy hammer until we get you over that hurdle. Sound good? Well, yeah. When you get over that hurdle and you've got that thorn out of your side and you've got blue sky ahead, it is going to be good. And the beauty of it is not only as effective as it is efficient, it's also cost effective as well. So if you would like to have bona fide one-on-one coaching with me to get going on getting rid of that sticking point in your life, then Giant Leap coaching is for you. Go to mountaintoppodcast.com/leap and let's talk about it. mountaintoppodcast.com/leap. It's your future, guys. If you have something that's holding you back, let's unleash the real you, get rid of that, and move on towards bigger and better things. mountaintoppodcast.com/leap is where it all starts. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.